The CDC is blaming drinking water on hundreds of illnesses and more than a dozen deaths. It says 42 drinking water associated outbreaks were reported in 19 states, including Pennsylvania. Between 2013 and 14, waterborne bacteria caused more than 1,000 people to get sick. 124 people were hospitalized and 13 people died. The CDC says all of the reported deaths were caused by Legionella bacteria.
A new global study is laying waste to the supposed purity of most bottled waters. Researchers affiliated with the journalism organization or Media tested nearly a dozen brands of water purchased in countries around the world, and they found some disquieting things. David Common's been looking at that research. David here in studio with me. This is the largest investigation of its kind, as I mentioned, in a number of different countries. Tell us what it found.
So what they did is they went to a number of countries, Asia, North America, South America, Europe, and they pulled bottled water that was available on the shelves and sent it to a lab in New York, had it tested, and they were looking for microplastics. Those are extremely tiny pieces of plastic, the thickness of a human hair. And in many cases, they found them. In fact, in 93% of the bottles that were tested, brands that you know, Aquafina, Dasani, Nestle, you know, the list goes on and on.
So international brands and not any brand in particular. Wow.
Yeah, all sorts of brands. In 93% of the bottles they tested, they found these microplastics. Now, in some cases, they were very, very tiny amounts. In some cases, they were thousands of particles in a liter of water. The average bottle would be about half a liter. So it gives you an idea that there can be a significant number of them actually out there. Wasn't found in every bottle, but it was certainly found in most, the overwhelming majority of the bottles that were tested. We know a few things about microplastics. We know that they exist all over the place. We know they're in tap water. We know that because Orb Media, this same group, actually did a test of tap water in many countries around the world. What they found is that there's actually less in the tap water they tested than in the bottled water they tested, which really is interesting to us because of the whole purity talk that goes on around bottled water.
Did they determine how the microplastics get into the water in the bottle?
They didn't look at that specifically, but they do have a few theories, partly because of the microplastics that they could identify, it is in many cases the same type of plastic as it is from the cap of the water bottle. So perhaps, we don't know this definitively, perhaps when that cracking open happens, these tiny little particles fall away. Now, is there any danger in that? That's, you know, of course, the next big question. And the answer is we don't know definitively. We know that these plastics are so small that they could probably pass through your gastrointestinal tract, that essentially they could get into your bloodstream, which means they can stay in your body. And we also know that plastics in general can absorb chemicals that could be harmful to our body. We didn't look particularly at what these plastics contain. They really are tiny, and that work has not been done. But it does certainly suggest that more work does need to be done.
And this is a whole new emerging area of science for the very reasons that you highlight. It's interesting, the companies, when asked for statements, they pointed to the fact this is a new area. There are no uniform standards. There are no regulations for these things, are there?
Absolutely. And there is, as the companies well point out, there is nothing that says you have to have below a certain amount or you can't have any. There's nothing in the world that says something like that. But we also have questions from scientists about what it might do. And so the companies come back to us and say, we're interested in this as well, but it's an emerging science. Some of the companies, some of the brands actually came back and said, yeah, we've found microplastics too, though in much lower levels than this Orb study is finding. This particular study, important to note, didn't look at bottled water in Canada. Even though I'm using the names of brands that exist in Canada, the bottles tested didn't come from Canada. And because it didn't, we're going to test it at Marketplace. We're going to try to see if we find similar results in Canadian bottled water.
April 6th, the air date for that investigation. So stay tuned. But David, thank you very much.
Painkillers, blood thinners, and chemotherapy drugs are just some of the substances that are found in your drinking water. There's new information that some drugs are ending up in our water at levels never seen before. CBC's Kelly Crow has more on that.
There's something happening to the rainbow darter, a tiny fish that lives in the rivers of southern Ontario. If they're downstream from a sewage treatment plant, the male fish turn into females.
If you expose them to wastewater, they will feminize. They will have eggs in the testes.
What's causing the males to develop eggs? human hormones, residue from prescription drugs that are flushed into the river. Using new highly sensitive equipment, scientists are finding an increasing variety of prescription drugs in the waterways. Painkillers, blood thinners, chemotherapy agents, hormones, antibiotics. If we swallow it, scientists can find it in the water.
Some of the drug comes in us and through us and out of us totally unchanged. So we actually have active drugs going into the waterway through our urine or feces.
Last month, a study of First Nations communities found levels of 3 prescription drugs in one southern Ontario river that were the highest in North America. And an unpublished Health Canada survey of tap water across the country found traces of prescription drugs in drinking water. Mark Servos is the lead author.
There are pharmaceuticals, as we expected, that are widely distributed in surface waters going into drinking water plants, and very low concentrations are detectable, but the concentrations are very, very low.
Because the drugs show up in such tiny traces, it would take hundreds of glasses of water before someone would be exposed to even a normal dose of the drug.
They're very low in concentrations. On the other hand, we have to be concerned because there's a mixture of these drugs that we're being exposed to in drinking water, and so that's some cause for concern.
Scientists still don't know if that combination of drugs in water poses a human health risk.
C'est pas de l'eau, c'est de la boue.
Ouais, c'est de la boue. Non, c'est le truc,
supporting this channel. You can do so by becoming a patron on my Patreon by pledging as little as $1 per month. Every little bit helps, and you're more than welcome to pledge more. And thank you to all of my current Patreons. I truly appreciate you. Thank you for helping me continue to bring you this great content.